Good morning, scholars. Today is Tuesday, April 28th. Today, we are going to be reviewing our order of operations that we started yesterday. So, lots of practice with gems today. I want to start off with some shout outs for 100% yesterday. Yesterday was tricky. We learned a lot about the order of operations, looking at our grouping symbols, our exponents, multiplication and division, and finally addition and subtraction. It was a tricky one. We did not have as many 100% as we usually do. But huge shout outs to the following 4 scholars who did score 100%. UNC really representing yesterday with Miguel Angel, Jaden, and Shania. Huge shout outs to those 3 scholars. And then from Duke, Camila. Exceptional work. It was a tricky one yesterday. So today, of course, we are going to spend some more time reviewing those order of operations, really focusing on gems. I do want to take a second to shout out some scholars who are already in the lead with our Vista virtual points. So starting with our Hadley campus, a fantastic showing already. Scholars who yesterday were submitting assignments, getting points for academic achievements, excelling on their spiral review, coming to office hours, coming to reteach, just taking advantage of every opportunity, coming to social lunch. So we have 10 beats in the lead right now. Way to go, 10 beats. Miguel Angel, a close second place. Take a look at who's in our top 5. You can see who is in our top 10. Looking good. All the way down to scholars in our top 20. Lots of exciting prizes at the end of this week. Huge shout out to Corday, who was our pizza winner. So I know today, Corday, you're enjoying your pizza delivery lunch. Can't wait to hear how that is. I know some of you have lunch bunch today. Excited to see you there. Some movie parties, dance parties coming up. So continue earning all of these points. Nice work. Over at our Maryvale campus, Monica and Edwin and Camila all tied for first place with 11 points. Keep it up. See if you can find your name, seeing who is in the top 5, top 10. Do you have some scholars with no points yet? Make sure you're stepping that up, getting those assignments turned in, showing that academic excellence, going to reteach, going to office hours, going to social lunch, all those great things so you can earn a bunch of points as well. All right, but shout out to our scholars who are in the lead right now. All right, we are going to start with a do now. This morning, this is going to be on your own. Take a second to make sure you have your paper out and ready to go. Let's go ahead and date it with today is April 28th. Hard to believe April's almost over. And you do have 5 questions in your do now this morning. I'll scroll down as you are working. They are just multiple choice. A little vocabulary review. So nothing you actually need to compute right now or calculate right now, but just a review of some of our vocabulary terms. I'm going to give us 3 minutes on the clock. Go ahead and get to work. You can just write the letter that is correct for number 1, 2, and 3, and then I'll scroll down. All right, I am going to scroll down a little bit. Number 4 and 5 do get a little bit trickier, so make sure you're taking your time. Number 5 is definitely the trickiest one on there. See how many of you will not get tricked. Here are all 5 questions if there was any you needed to see again. About 45 more seconds. Again, be very careful with question number 5. This one was very challenging for us yesterday on our independent practice. All right, final 20 seconds to finish it up. All right, let's check in and see what we got. For question number 1, the sum of 8 and 4. I know that the sum means we are adding. It's the answer when we add, so sum of 8 and 4. So our correct answer, of course, should be A, 8 plus 4. Please check your answers along with me. If you had A, go ahead and give yourself a check. All right, number 2. The product of 8 and 4. Well, we know that this word product is always referring to multiplication. A product is our answer when we multiply. So the product of 8 and 4 would be C, 8 times 4. Nice. The product, of course, meaning multiplying. If you got C, go ahead and give yourself a check. All right, getting a little trickier. Number 3, 4 greater than 8. All right, well, 4 greater than, so I'm thinking I'm starting with 8, and I'm getting 4 greater or 4 more. If I'm really stuck, I can always draw it out. I think about having 8 things, whatever those are. Those could be cookies, those could be Skittles. I have 8 of them, and I want 4 greater than that. Well, I'm definitely not taking 4 away. I'm not making groups. I'm not making 4 groups of 8. I'm not dividing it into groups. This is just another way of saying 8, 4 greater than 8. So we're really just adding those. So our correct answer is A. I know that phrase was a little tricky in yesterday's independent practice. If you got A, really nice work. Go ahead and give yourself a check. All right, number 4, divide 8 by 4. Actually, pretty self-explanatory here. Divide 8 by 4. We have 8 divided by 4 right here as choice D. If you got that one, go ahead and give yourself a check. And finally, number 5, the real doozy. This is the one that got so tricky for some of us yesterday on our independent practice. Subtract 4 from 8. Well, we are so used to going from left to right and saying, oh, when I read this, the 4 comes first and then the 8. So this must be 4 minus 8. And I'm going to select A. Oh, I hope nobody picked A. A is saying 8 subtracted from 4. We also know if I only have 4 things, let's just say I have my 4 cookies right here, I can't take away 8 of them. Now, once you get into middle school next year, you'll start doing some work with negative numbers, but right now we don't subtract with negative numbers, so I can't even solve 4 minus 8. I can't take 8 or subtract 8 from 4, so writing it as 4 minus 8 is not correct. If you accidentally put A, I want you to see if you can fix it now. How would we write subtract 4 from 8? You're right, it is B. When we say subtract 4 from 8, we're actually starting with our 8, or starting, there's my 8 cookies, and I'm subtracting 4 from the 8. Of course, leaving me with 4. If you had B, really nice work. Give yourself a huge check and a smiley face. Way to not get tricked, because this was very challenging for some of us yesterday. All right, now that we've warmed up a little bit, we're gonna keep going. Now it's gonna be a little bit more challenging. I'm just gonna draw a line down my paper. Go ahead and set up, ready for question number 6. All right, these we are going to be writing out ourselves. So let's first take a look at question number 6. Add 3 and 5, and then divide by 4. All right, well, we already know adding 3 and 5, that's pretty easy. Let's go ahead and write that down. Add 3 and 5, and then divide by 4. Okay, and then divide by 4. My question now is, do I need to add any parentheses? Go ahead and evaluate with your thumbs. What do you think? Thumbs up or thumbs down? Do we need to add parentheses? If I want to add 3 and 5 and then divide by 4. We do need parentheses. I know that without parentheses, my order of operations, if we think back to our gems from yesterday, my order of operations tells me what to do first. Let's take a second to just review our order of operations from yesterday. Yesterday, we talked about this word gems. We did very well with that question yesterday. A gem is just a beautiful, sparkly stone, but this word gems can help us remember the order of operations. What order do we do our math in, or what order do we do our operations in when we're presented with a long problem? So yesterday, we talked a lot about how the G stands for grouping symbols. The G stands for grouping symbols. These could be parentheses, they could be brackets. We crushed our work with the grouping symbols yesterday. We have gotten really good at knowing if I see parentheses or brackets, boom, done first. That's where I need to go first, is my grouping symbols. After our G grouping symbols, our next letter is E for exponents. Yesterday, we didn't see very many problems with exponents, but we always just want to check because that would come next. Do I need to do anything with my exponents? As a reminder, our exponents are when we have a number to the power of another number. For example, 10 to the 4th would be an example of an exponent, telling us I need to multiply 10 out 4 times. 10 times 10 times 10 times 10. So always want to check for some exponents. After our exponents, the next place we check, this M, this can be a little tricky because the M stands for actually multiplication or division. Those two go hand in hand, multiplication or division, and we just go from left to right. So if we have any multiplication and division after we've looked at our grouping, after we've looked at our exponents, we go from left to right. Our multiplication and division have to come before we get to the S in gems, subtract, or add. This is where we got a little tricked yesterday. We are so used to just wanting to do everything from left to right. Of course we are. That's how we read. Our minds naturally go left to right, left to right. Just like when we had to retrain our brains to do the standard algorithm of multiplication, where we actually go from right to left instead of left to right, we're going to have to retrain our brains today with our multiplication division coming before subtraction and addition, even if the subtraction and addition comes on the left. So let's take a look at what this might look like with this example right here. I have 3 plus 5 divided by 4. If I leave it like this and solve it using my order of operations, I check, do I have any grouping symbols? Nope. Do I have any exponents? Nope. The very next thing I have to do is I have to look for multiplication or division. Multiplication or division. And so as I check my problem, I see I have some division right here. And so my order of operations tells me that before I can do anything with subtraction or addition, I have to do that multiplication and division, which means I'm dividing 5 divided by 4. And then I would add 3. But let's go back to what the problem is asking. The problem wants us to add 3 and 5 and then divide by 4. So in order to fix this, this is where I'm going to add in my parentheses. Because now, when I look at my order of operations, the first thing I do is I use my grouping symbols. So 3 plus 5 is 8. Now I can divide 8 divided by 4 is 2. All right, let's take a look at another example. All right, number 7. Go ahead and get it written down on your paper. Let's take a look. We're writing the expression for 2 greater than the product of 3 and 4. Okay, I'm thinking back to the work we did in our warm-up. I know 2 greater than just means we're adding. Let's go ahead and write down. We have 2 greater than. Just like we knew 4 greater than 8, we were just adding 4. So 2 greater than the product of 3 and 4. Well, we saw in our warm-up this morning, product, of course, means multiplication. So 2 greater than the product of 3 and 4. Now my question is, do I need parentheses? 2 greater than the product of 3 and 4. Go ahead and evaluate with your thumbs, thumbs up, thumbs down. Do we need parentheses? We don't need parentheses. Why don't we need parentheses? Because let's go back to our order of operations. Our GEMS order of operations tells us that we use grouping symbols first, then exponents. The very next thing we do is we multiply. So I don't need to put parentheses around my 3 times 4 because I already do that first. In order to solve this, I have to do my multiplication before I can do my addition if there's no parentheses, even though the 2 is first on the left. I know, kind of confusing. But if I wanted to solve this, well, the product of 3 and 4 is 12. 2 plus 12 is 14. So 2 greater than the product of 3 and 4, 2 greater than 12 is 14. Okay, let's try another one. Number 8. Right. Subtract 3 from 9 and then divide by 2. So many places to get tricked in this one. Go ahead and first start. How do we write subtract 3 from 9? I know that nobody is writing. Why is that wrong? Why is it wrong to say 3 minus 9 if my problem says subtract 3 from 9? This is actually subtracting 9 from 3. At this point, I don't know how to take 9 away from 3. If I have 3 fingers up, I can't take 9 away from them. So this is not how we write subtract 3 from 9. Go ahead and fix it now on your paper. Everyone knows how to write subtract 3 from 9. All right, excellent. It should look like this. Subtract 3 from 9. And then divide by 2. and then divide by 2. All right, last thing I need to check for, do I need parentheses? Evaluate, thumbs up, thumbs down. Do we need parentheses to subtract 3 from 9 and then divide by 2? We do. We need the parentheses. Without them, our GEMS order of operation would tell me grouping, exponents, multiply, divide. I would have to look for that division, and I would have to do 3 divided by 2 first before I do 9 minus 3. But that's not what this one wants me to do. It wants me to subtract 3 from 9 and then divide by 2. Go ahead and add in your parentheses. And we can solve. I subtracted 3 from 9, and that gave me 6. And then I divided by 2, and that would give me 3. All right, 2 more to go. Number 9. So you guys can try this one and not get tricked. The sum of 10 and 2 minus the product of 3 and 4. All right, a lot going on here. I want you to try this one on your own. We all know how to write the sum of 10 and 2. Go ahead, pencil should be to paper. The sum of 10 and 2 minus, we know how to write the product of 3 and 4. And we want to make sure to add our parentheses. So we have 2 separate things going on before we can subtract. I need the sum of 10 and 2, which we know is 12. And then I'm subtracting the product of 3 and 4, which is also 12, for an answer of 0. All right, and finally, number 10. Subtract 4 from 8 and then multiply by 2. Totally on your own. Go ahead and try it. Don't get tricked. This is one of those tricky subtraction ones. Nobody is going to write 4 minus 8. When you try to solve it, you don't even know how to solve that. All right, go ahead and write out your equation. Being really carefully, do I need parentheses? All right, subtract 4 from 8. That's 8 minus 4. And then multiply by 2. I do need to use my parentheses. If I don't have them, the first thing I do is I multiply, and I would be doing 4 times 2. But that's not what question 10 wants me to do. It wants me to subtract 4 from 8 and then multiply by 2. All right. Now that we have warmed up with some of this vocabulary, we're now ready to start solving. So we do have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 problems to try today together, and then you have some to try on your own. We are going to be solving these, remembering our order of operations. I need some clean paper. Go ahead and make sure I am all set up. Ready to go. All right. I want to give myself a reminder about GEMS. So I'm going to look at my anchor chart one last time. GEMS. I'm going to write this on my scrap paper, actually, just as a great reminder to myself. I'm going to write it up here. Gems. And then I'm going to see if I can write what each letter stands for without even looking. Now, if you need to look, your anchor chart is here, but challenge yourself so you can kind of cover up that anchor chart without looking. See if you can write what each letter in GEMS stands for. Go ahead. Was anyone able to do it without looking at all? Excellent. So I'm just going to leave this on the top of my paper. I'm going to be constantly coming back to this just as a reminder of my order of operations. Your anchor chart is in your Google Classroom, so you can be using that. As you solve. All right, we are ready to solve. Let's go ahead and set up our paper with question number 11. All right, I'm going to copy it down exactly the way it's written on the screen. You're doing the same thing in your notes. 8 plus 3 parentheses times 4 minus 2 parentheses. So you have it written down in your notes exactly the same way we wrote it. It's written on the screen. All right, now I'm ready to solve. I'm ready to take a look at my order of operations. I remember that word GEMS. So I start at the top, grouping. Do I have any grouping symbols? Yes, I do have some grouping symbols. I need to take care of what's in my grouping symbols first. So let's start with our first grouping symbol. We have these parentheses, 8 plus 3. I know how to solve that. Go ahead and write your answer. And then I look at my next grouping symbol, for more parentheses. I know how to solve what's inside of that. Go ahead and write what that equals. All right, only thing I'm left with is multiplication. Don't have any exponents, so the very next thing I need to do, the last step I have, go ahead and finish solving. And we should have gotten to an answer of 22. All right, number 12. Go ahead and write it down exactly as it's written on your screen. Be careful to copy every parentheses. Okay, interesting. Same exact numbers, same exact symbols, but we're going to have a slightly different order of operations, and we may end up with a slightly different answer. Let's check our order of operations. GEMS. All right, first thing I want to check for is grouping. The first thing I always check for is grouping. Bam, I have some grouping symbols right here, so I'm going to solve what's inside my parentheses. I'm going to copy the rest of the problem exactly as it's written. All right, next thing I check for is my exponents. Don't have any exponents. Next thing I check for is multiplication and division. I always do the multiplication division next, no matter where it is in the problem. Now, I see it right here. My multiplication is 11 times 4. Whether it's the first thing, whether it's the last thing, I have to do that multiplication and division before I add and subtract. So let's go ahead and do our multiplication and division. 11 times 4 is 44. I don't have any division, so now I'm ready to move down to subtract and add. I do have some subtraction, so I can solve that. So interesting. We had the exact same numbers, 8 plus 3 times 4 minus 2. 8 plus 3 times 4 minus 2. But when we move those parentheses, it changes the order that I do my operations in, and we get a totally different answer. All right, let's try number 13. Go ahead and copy it down exactly the way it is written. 8 plus 3 times 4 minus 2. All right, again, we have the exact same numbers. Let's see what our order of operations tells us to do this time. First thing I need to check for is grouping. Do I have any grouping symbols? No, I don't. No grouping. Next thing I check for is exponents. No exponents. Next thing I check for is multiply and divide. All right, this is where yesterday we were getting a little bit tricked. I have some multiplication, and it's right here. So I need to do my multiplication before I can do my subtraction and addition. I can't just do 8 plus 3 because I see it first. The only reason I did that in number 11 and number 12 is because my grouping symbols, my parentheses, told me to do that first. I don't have any more parentheses, which means I have to do my multiplication first because it comes first in my order of operations. So 3 times 4 is 12. I'm going to copy the rest of the problem the way it's written. 8 plus 3 times 4 minus 2. All right, at this point, I would check to see, do I have any more multiplication or any division? I don't. Now I'm ready to move on to subtract and add. Now subtract and add, because they're in the same step, they're both in step 4, I'm just going to go from left to right. So I'm going to subtract and add. 8 plus 12 is 20. 20 minus 2 is 18. Wow, 3 problems with the exact same numbers and symbols. 8 plus 3 times 4 minus 2. But when we change things like parentheses, we change the order of operations, and then we no longer get the same answer. That's why it's so important we follow our order of operations. It's just the order we've decided to go in. So when we solve, we have to go in the order of gems. We have to start with our grouping. We have to then move on to our exponents. We have to then multiply and divide, no matter excuse me, where it is in the problem. We have to do that multiplication and division first. The last thing we can do is subtract and add. All right, a couple more to try. All right, you are going to try number 14, 15, and 16 on your own. I'll put some time in the clock, and then we'll come back and check in to see how you did. You are copying them exactly the way they're written on your paper. I know you have your gems reminder written in your notes. Go ahead, write them down exactly the way you see them. And solve. All right, go ahead and get to work, and then we'll check in when you are done. Think about 30 more seconds. All right, let's check in and see how we did. So question 14, thinking about our order of operations, our gems, where's the first place we would start? Well, we think about our grouping, our exponents, our multiplication, division, and then our subtraction and addition. So in question 14, we would start inside our parentheses. So we should have started right here. This should have been the very first thing that you did, was your 5 times 4 to get you to 20. You would then write the rest of the equation exactly as it's written, 30 minus 20 divided by 2. Here's where sometimes we get tricked. Our brains want us to go from left to right. We want to do 30 minus 20, which would be 10, and divide 10 by 2. And we would say our answer is 5. But if you got an answer of 5, you did not follow your GEMS order of operation. We have to remember that this multiply and divide comes before subtract and add. So if I have any multiplication and division, which now I do, I have 20 divided by 2. I have to do that before I can do addition and subtraction. So I need to solve 20 divided by 2, which is 10. I'm then going to write the rest of my problem, 30 minus 10, and I should have come to an answer of 20. If you got an answer of 20, or high five, get ready. Very nice work. Give yourself a check. That one is tricky. If you got an answer of 5, you did not follow the correct order of operations. You just went from left to right, and you tried to do subtracting and adding before multiplying and dividing. No can do. You have to do that multiplication and division first. All right, let's take a look at number 15. Number 15, starting back at the top of our order of operations, what do we need to do first? Of course, the first thing we need to do is grouping symbols. We do have some grouping symbols. They're right here. So the first thing we would do is 4 divided by 2, which would give us an answer of 2. We then write the rest of our problem, 30 minus 5 times 2. Okay, now we have to go back to that order of operations. I'm done with grouping. I don't have any exponents. I do have some multiplication or division. I have to do my multiplication and division before I can do my addition and subtraction, even though subtraction is written first. Doesn't matter. We have to follow our order of operations. So we have to do our 5 times 2 before we can do 30 minus 5. When we multiply 5 times 2, we get 10. We bring down the rest of the problem, and 30 minus 10, we get to the answer again of 20. If you didn't follow order of operations, you probably did 30 minus 5, which is 25. 25 times 2 is 50. If you got 50, not quite. Fix it now. If you got 20, cha-ching. Very impressed. Nice work. All right, and last one, number 16. Here we have 2 sets of parentheses. So order of operations tells me to do my grouping symbols first. So I need to first take care of my 30 minus 5, which is 25, and then 4 divided by 2, which is 2. Now, and only now, am I ready to multiply. Now that I've solved what's inside of both sets of parentheses, I don't have any exponents, so I can move right into multiply and divide. 25 times 2 is 50. If you got that, give yourself a check. If you got all 3 of those correct, I am most impressed. Please give yourself a beautiful score of 3 with a lovely, happy face, perhaps with a hat, celebrating all of your great hard work. Nice job. Order of operations can be tricky. We are so used to wanting to go from left to right. It's how we read. It makes sense. We have to really retrain our brains. I want to make sure everybody is using your order of operations anchor chart. This is in your Google Classroom. Additionally, it is so helpful, I find, to just make yourself a note at the top of your scrap paper where you're doing your work and just keep saying to yourself, grouping, exponents, multiply, divide, subtract, and add. It seems like where we get the most stuck is right here, reminding ourselves that first we have to multiply and divide, only then can we subtract and add. It's tricky, it's a lot to keep track of. Today, as you're doing your independent practice, I know scholars will be taking their time, using your notes from today's video, thinking about what that vocabulary means, and really taking the time to solve correctly. So impressed with those 4 scholars who got a 100% yesterday. I cannot wait to see way more 100%s coming out of today's lesson. As a reminder, we are available for office hours between 3:15 and 4:15. You do not have to submit your work, find out you made a mistake, and then come to office hours. You can actually watch the video, do most of the work, realize you have a question, come to office hours, get some help, and then submit your work. There's some scholars that have been doing a really great job of this, scoring 100% over and over and over again because they bring their questions to office hours. So excited to see many of you at office hours today. With any questions you have about order of operations, if you submit your work and realize you didn't score as well as you would have hoped, I should definitely see you at office hours. Huge shout out to Anira, who every day comes to office hours to say, oh, you know what, I got 6 out of 7. That's a great score. I missed 1, but I want to go over the one question that I missed. That is how you will become, that's how she will become just an even more brilliant mathematician. So nice work. Excited to see you guys at office hours this afternoon. Happy Tuesday. See everyone either this afternoon or tomorrow.